So why was last year the right time to kind of call it a day? Have you called it a day? And if so, was last year the right time to call it a day?
I don't want to 100% say I've called it a day. I don't want to put those restrictions on myself, but it's mostly calling it a day. And the reality is, I had originally planned for it to be kind of the end, um, and wasn't hoping, or was hoping that it wouldn't end kind of the way it did, but it turned out to be a blessing in the sense of like, uh, the last 6 months from April until October were really physically hard for me. And so like I'd hurt my neck pretty bad, wrestling Will Ospreay in our pay-per-view Dynasty. And that last 6 months, like I wasn't even sure I could get through it. Right. And so it was actually a real blessing in the sense of you think like, oh, that doesn't sound great. But what it meant was when I was done, I was ready to be done. And so, and if I would have felt great and perfect, I think that would have been a little bit harder to be like, yeah, I'll come back, and then the comebacks become more and more frequent or whatever it is. And yeah, but now I'm feeling a little bit better and don't necessarily want to feel worse again. So
Fair. And then there's lots of internet reports that say, you've lost feeling or this or that. Are you able to say how you are? You say you're feeling better. Are you in good health now?
I wouldn't say good health in the sense of like I can't work out the way that I used to work out, right? Like I'm like my therapist literally won't allow me to. Like I can't hold heavy dumbbells just down, right? I just there's certain things, and we're hoping to build that back up, right? So like in working with people, that sort of thing, like one of my goals is to be able to go and train jujitsu, not compete, but just be able to go do jujitsu and not get hurt, right? And so now and one of the guys that I'm working with said, yeah, I think that's possible in like a year. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean for wrestling, right? It's like, but I also don't want to say like, hey, I'm done wrestling because I've said a couple times like, oh, I mean, it's 95% sure that I won't be competing at Forbidden Door, right?
Right.
And one of the guys just said, well, that still leaves 5%. And I'm like, yeah, that's if something horrible happens and Tony calls me like, hey, Brian, we need somebody to fill in. I was like, okay, I guess I can do it, right? Like, but
Never say never.
yeah, never say never. But other than that, it's like I'm now at the stage of my life. I did 25 years of wrestling and I loved it and I'm satisfied and it feels like enough right now. So
Okay. And Tony Khan said in an interview the other day that he's in kind of daily contact with you. So you're presumably feeding into AEW in other ways
mhm.
at present. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm just kind of a consultant for AEW now, and so but that you know, but I do several things there. I'm part of the disciplinary committee. I'm like those sorts of things behind it, and it's not like people may think it's creative. It's some of it is, but it's very little of it, right? Like we had that awesome spring breakthrough show that was. I haven't seen Dynamite this week actually because I was flying here, right? So where I live, I have to leave like 2 days before. so anyways, and yesterday, by the time I got here, I was so tired. I haven't, but I'll watch the show by the time I get home tomorrow. But the week before was that spring breakthrough show, which had that incredible Osprey Takeshita match and the Ops winning the trios titles and this incredible show. I didn't have a single thing to do with that show. Right? It's just one of the best wrestling TV shows ever, one of the best TV matches of all time with the Osprey Takeshita match, and yeah, I didn't have a single thing to do with that show. So
You said just interesting to follow that. You're on the disciplinary committee. Do you think that that's important for wrestlers that they know that there's someone who has that experience of being a talent?
Yeah, who has the perspective
Yeah.
of like, okay, so from a uh, if you're from like the business side, so there's two other people on the disciplinary committee. One's a lawyer, one's our chief financial officer, maybe, but has like a very business background, and we all come at it from different perspectives, and I think we're all good at listening to each other and hearing each other's perspectives, and then using those perspectives to weigh and balance, whatever the outcomes might be.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Just obviously, you've got shows coming up in the UK, but you coming out at Wembley. Can you talk through that experience of like being backstage and coming out, the music hitting? What was that like?
Oh, it was incredible.
Something.
Yeah. It was incredible. So, we have some people on our production side who are just unbelievable. And one of our guys came up with this idea of we filmed it, me meditating, and then it coming into my eyes, and then he came up with all that, right? And then putting it into, and then zooming back out. And I thought it was really, really, really cool, because you go in and it sounds like I'm talking about my career, like I've done it all for you, but it turns out to be about my family, which is really, it was the story, and then to come out and to get the final countdown is super cool, and the a whole stadium doing that, but then also seeing my kids there, my wife there, like them getting to be part of it was just incredible.
I was going to ask about that, because you're at the end of the match. You're obviously physically exhausted, but also there's blood. It kind of your kids scared, or is there is your daughter was there, right?
Yeah. So I was bleeding in the ring, and I look over to see how my daughter's reacting, and I could see her crying, and I thought she was crying because I was bleeding. No, she's crying because Swerve Strickland yelled at her. because they know, in their heart of hearts, they know that it's ketchup. Right. That's what my wife has told them anytime they've seen me bleed. Oh, it's just ketchup. It's just ketchup. And so to them, they weren't traumatized by the blood. They just thought it was ketchup. In fact, my son, afterwards, we're in the trainer's room and the doctor, and he's cleaning me up, and Buddy is helping to clean me up, and he actually licks my face and he goes, "Ew!" And I said, "Bud, don't do that. It's old ketchup. It's old ketchup. That's why it's."
Good. It's good you're still maintaining.
Yeah.
And did Swerve apologize at the end?
So when we got to the back, I told my daughter, who was still like a little traumatized, and then Buddy, because they had just seen this man beat the crap out of me out there. But I introduced them to Swerve and said, because he's a wonderful human being, right? And so they got to see that, and see that, wrestling is what it is, right? And so that that the man who was yelling at my daughter was not truly, like, he was playing the bad guy, right?
Right. Not true, hey?
Yeah.
AEW, it always feels like it's on the threshold of breaking big, and notwithstanding the fact that it did Wembley twice, it feels like it's kind of nearly there. What do you think it needs to kind of fully break through to get that kind of wider recognition of being, whether it's on a par with WWE if we're doing comparisons, or to get to the next level? Mm-hmm. What does it need, do you think?
So, if anybody had the real answer to that, but one of the things that I think is time, right? When you look at, for example, WWE's growth, I attribute a lot of that to infrastructure, right? And so having the right people in the right spots, and it takes time to figure out who the right people in the right spots are, right? And I think, but that said, to get to the next level, I'm not sure what that means at this point, right? So we've got this incredible TV rights deal. We sold 80,000 tickets to Wembley Stadium, not last year, but the year before. Last year, we sold 50,000 tickets, right? So so what does that mean? And I don't know if people are, when they say things like that, are they expecting us to beat WWE or be closer in numbers or viewership, but all that stuff's just going to take time. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I think time is the answer. I think the world is changing so rapidly, right? Like the amount of people watching cable is becoming less and less than ever. The amount of people who are doing streaming stuff is more. How is that going to change the world? How is AI going to change the world? How is people constantly looking at their phones, consuming content like this on their phones? How is that changing the landscape of things? It's all going to be interesting what happens in the next 10 to 15 years. So
We're in for some change, I think.
yeah.
What's it like working with Tony Khan? How is he as a boss? And do you get any sense that when you have dirt sheet commentary on kind of backstage at AEW, does that have any impact on him or on the kind of the workings backstage at all?
So I don't know. It's hard for me to understand a lot of those things because I'm not a part of that, right? In the sense of I don't pay attention. I don't have social media on my phone. I just heard somebody say uh, keeping having social media apps on your phone is like keeping heroin in your house. It's like it's like because once you get on, it's very hard to get off, right? And so it's like so anyways, but as far as like dirt sheet stuff, I don't know what people are saying, so it's hard for me to gauge how that affects anybody, but I do know wrestlers who are very cognizant of what people say about them on social media and that sort of thing. And I think Tony's on social media a decent amount, so he's probably cognizant of what people are saying. But I haven't had any interactions with him as far as like because I think he knows that I don't know what's going on.
So you're not his social media
Yeah.
And him as a boss?
Oh, as him as a boss, it's really interesting because he's super kind, right? And so I really have enjoyed dealing with him and brainstorming with him about creative ideas or whatever when we talk creative. And now I'm kind of just a consultant, so it's like he may call me, he may not, as far as like about something that he needs for a show or whatever it is. But whenever we get a chance to talk about wrestling or anything really, like we're very like minded and I think we both tend to be kind people who don't say negative things about other people, right? Like there's not a lot of like there's not a lot of like, oh, this, like not even like just kind to each other, but just like not talking bad about other people, even people outside of our company, right? Like there's not a lot of bad mouthing going on in our conversations, and I like that, right? Sometimes in any community, but sometimes in the wrestling community, there's there's people who'll be like, this person. It's just like we don't need that, right?
Much better way to be in the world. If you were starting a company today, what 3 things would you do based on the experience that you've had in the wrestling world?
Oh gosh, I don't think there's one. I would hire somebody who knows what they're doing because I don't. And I mean, I like you have to understand there's so many things. Despite being in wrestling for 25 years, there's so many things that I don't know, right? And so it's one of the things I think about being a leader is to be cognizant of the things that you don't know. One of the things that and I don't know, I wouldn't say I admire him, but one of my friends was talking to me about Bill Gates and how impressed he was with Bill Gates. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, because he delegates so well. And one of the things that, whether it's true or whether it's not true, he wants to give away all his money before he dies, right? Is one of the things that he said. But he can't do it because the person that he's delegated to do his finances is so good at investing that, like, okay, we're gonna give away $40 billion this year. Oh, but with our investments, we made $50 billion. So it's like, oh no. So now we have more money that we have to give away or whatever it is. And so it's like, that would be my aim in starting a wrestling company. It would be identify the things that I'm not good at or that I don't know, and find good people to fill those roles, because you can't do everything. That would be my thing. But if you're asking like, okay, what talent would I want? That's different, right? That's it.
What talent would you want?
Well, so at this stage, gosh, I'd want Will Ospreay for sure. I'd want Swerve Strickland, and then, I'm going to say 4: John Moxley and Kenny Omega. Okay. I would want to kind of base my company around those 4 people, and then there's younger people who, there's like MJF, there's Hangman, there's like these people who I would like, want in the picture, So it's and Zack Sabre Jr. I would get, because that's my jam, right? So.
Well, you've got Forbidden Door. Are there people that you've seen from Japan, for example, that you would like, some dream matches that you would like to see at Forbidden Door?
Well, so one of the things, I would be very interested in, just because of the market and because they've had matches in New Japan together that were just incredible, is Zack Sabre Jr. and Will Ospreay. Because I like the contrasting styles, right? And I think it would be very interesting what that looks like in the O2, right? With the UK fans, But yeah, there's, gosh, they have so many good guys right now. Like I've been very impressed with Goto's run as the IWGP champion. Like, it's been like really cool, and the storytelling has been fantastic. But yeah, too many to name.
And you wrestled in the UK before. Like with, plenty of times, obviously with the major companies, but on the independents too.
Yeah, but they were some of the funnest times of my career. Like, I say this, and I'm not joking. So I did the Butlins tours with Bryan Danielson. So it was like, we would do like six matches a week, right? And we'd just go from Butlins to Butlins to Butlins to Butlins. And if Bryan Danielson would have paid me a little bit more, I would have never left. I would have never gone to WWE. Nobody would have ever heard of my name. I would have just been a touring Butlins wrestler, because he would also do, so that was very entertainment and fun, but then he would also do what they would call town shows, which would be like in like a normal wrestling independent venue, but he would always get a good crowd, like, 500 to 1,000 people or whatever it is, and where you could do. So Will Ospreay calls Butlins wrestling pantomime wrestling. I'd never heard that term before. He was like, "Yeah, I saw you at the show." I was like, "Oh, Bryan Danielson, what he's doing pantomime wrestling?" And I'm just like, I'd never heard that term before. And so, but you would do when you would do the actual wrestling halls or whatever it is, you'd get to do so it was a nice mix. And then from here, I could go and do shows in Germany and stuff like that. Like, honestly, like I said, if Dixon would have paid me a little bit more, I would have never left.
In a different place. Yeah. If you could, this may be a slightly poisoned question, but if you could pick one to run a company, TK, Vince, Dixie, Carter, Eric Bishop, or Triple H, right? That's your selection. Which of them would you pick to run a company, and why? The kind of follow up to the question before. Which of them would you choose to run your company, and why?
Well, so regardless that this is my legitimate answer, people are going to assume, because I work for AEW, that he's just saying that because this is his boss. But I would legitimately have Tony Khan be
why
that
so?
Person. I think he's very in tune with what wrestling fans want. But then also, he is a good person. and I'm not saying anything bad about anybody else, but I know that he always tries to treat people with respect and kindness, no matter where they are on, like, up or down the roster, right? I remember after the first Wembley show, we were in a bit of a disarray backstage because of some things that had happened, and we were putting together Dynamite. I was hurt; I had broken my arm, and but because of the situation, I flew in and like, hey, what can I help with? Whatever it is, and one of the talent of somebody you would consider very undercard, right, and not a top priority, had an issue, and Tony took time out to talk to this person. And it's just like, and not talk down to them, but talk to them about their concerns or whatever it is. Sometimes I worry that he is almost too kind, right? Because we're trying to get a show out, everything's in disarray, but he takes other people's feelings into consideration. You know what I mean? And so those are the things that I think he's constantly. There's also this idea that he's an outsider in the wrestling business, and I think he constantly feels the need to prove himself, which I think is a good thing, right? He's like when he thinks there's negative feedback or whatever, he doubles down, puts his nose to the grindstone, and tries to make sure that our product is appealing to our fan base. You know.
I think probably a last question. I don't know what our timing's like, but yeah. Forbidden Door, the idea of bringing these different kind of companies or the kind of things that were unimaginable before, choosing from, I guess, any promotion and even any time frame, what are some of the dream matches that you would like to see, either for yourself or in general, in a kind of Forbidden Door?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, if you could take people from any sort of any sort of time period, that's kind of interesting because you've got like, I really love old British wrestling, right? And so you've got like the Steve Grays of the world. Steve Gray, I think, was just incredible, right? And what does that look like against Fujiwara, who's like one of my favorite wrestlers to watch from Japan? You know what I mean? What does that look like? Because Fujiwara didn't really wrestle. He wrestled the technical style, but not necessarily the British style. And like those sorts of things, I'm just, I'd be fascinated by like, and I don't know. There's just too many incredible matchups when you start thinking in those types of terms. Okay, here's one that I would love, and these are two guys that are not necessarily the biggest mainstream names. I would love to see John Cortez versus Fujiwara. John Cortez was a British wrestler and who did in the I want to say late 70s, early 80s. Although I'm sure he wrestled longer than that, but he wrestled like a very serious mat style with Fujiwara. I think that would just be super cool and incredible. But yeah.
And who from the AEW roster, who are the two people that you think we should be keeping our eye on, maybe a man and a woman, that we should be keeping our eye on in terms of coming through?
Like up and coming wrestlers? Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean that's so hard. That's so hard to say. That's so hard to say because the level of talent, and you don't want to leave somebody out. I'm a huge supporter of Daniel Garcia. I think Daniel Garcia, I think it's his connection with the audience is really cool and interesting. But I mean, like, if you can't describe Will Ospreay as an up and comer, right? You just can't. I mean, he's only 30, and he's already like, if he's not the best wrestler in the world, he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, right? So, I think it's really hard because a lot of that will depend on opportunities. But from the female side, like, okay, if I were coming back as a bad guy, like if I were to come back as a bad guy, say a masked bad guy who, and if I was a woman, who would I want to wrestle? Willow.
Right.
Like, I think Willow is just, like, she just has a great energy about her, right? The way that she fires up and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, I think seeing her kind of chase championship gold in AEW is one of the cool things. If we can tell that story well enough, I think it'll be super cool.